This was not science at its best. It was a warning from the darker side of progress. It was science without limits, and sometimes without mercy. And the people inside these experiments were often never truly safe. History remembers discoveries, breakthroughs, and brilliant minds that changed the modern world forever. But it also hides experiments that crossed lines humanity should never cross. Some were meant to understand disease, obedience, or the human mind. Others were driven by fear, power, and the belief that any method was justified. What makes them horrifying is not only what happened, but who allowed them to happen, and how long they continued. One of the most infamous cases began in the United States in 1932. It was called the Tuskegee Syphilis Study, and it targeted poor black men in Alabama. Researchers promised medical care, but many participants were never told the full truth. They were being observed, not properly treated, while doctors watched the disease progress. Even after penicillin became the standard treatment, the study continued for years. The men were denied real help, so researchers could keep collecting data. What was presented as medicine became a betrayal of trust. Another disturbing chapter came from experiments on obedience and authority. In the 1960s, Stanley Milgram wanted to know why ordinary people follow harmful orders. Volunteers were told they were helping with a study about learning, but they were instructed to deliver painful electric shocks to another person. The shocks were not real, but the fear, stress, and moral pressure were. Many participants continued simply because an authority figure told them to, while a researcher calmly stood beside them. The experiment revealed something deeply unsettling about human behavior. Under pressure, ordinary people can do disturbing things they never imagined. Then came one of the darkest chapters involving mind control. During the Cold War, the CIA secretly ran a project known as MK Ultra. Its goal was to explore manipulation, control, and the breaking of the human mind. Some subjects were given drugs like LSD, often without informed consent. Others were exposed to psychological stress, isolation, and secret testing environments. Much of the program remained hidden for years behind secrecy and destroyed records. It showed how fear and power can turn research into abuse. Not every horrifying experiment came from governments or intelligence agencies. In 1971, the Stanford Prison Experiment tried to study behavior inside a simulated prison. College students were divided into guards and prisoners in a controlled setting, but the situation quickly became cruel, aggressive, and psychologically dangerous. The guards embraced power, and the prisoners showed signs of emotional collapse. What was planned as a short study ended early because it was spiraling out of control far faster than anyone expected. These experiments were different, but they shared one frightening pattern. Human beings were reduced to subjects, data, or tools for a larger goal. Consent was ignored, suffering was minimized, and ethics came far too late. Over time, public outrage, journalism, and investigations forced science to confront what had been done. New ethical rules were created to protect patients, volunteers, and vulnerable communities. Informed consent became central, and independent oversight became harder for institutions to ignore. But the existence of these experiments still leaves an uncomfortable question. How many people suffered before the world finally decided there had to be limits? The darkest experiments in history were not just scientific failures or broken studies. They were moral warnings about what happens when curiosity outruns conscience, and that is why these horrifying experiments are still remembered today.